So, up until very recently, I got stuck in the New Age movement. I resonated with a lot of those ideas, and I think the reason why people resonate with a lot of those ideas is because there's always a lot of truth that's found in many different religions, including the New Age movement and the scientism movement. But there's also a lot of deceptions as well. I think of it like a pill, where the pill is sugary on the outside, so maybe it tastes good on the way down, but on the inside, the core of it is actually poison. And I also think of life as a chess game as well, and this is something I realized through Mark Passio's work, where you can't underplay the importance of action. There's no other way around it. You could, Benny did mention The Secret, and there definitely is a lot of benefit to changing how you think, and also changing how you feel. But what's left out of the New Age movement is the action. The action is necessary to see the kind of change you want to see in the world, because you can meditate all you want, and maybe you could balance your brain and achieve bliss, but if you ignore the outside world completely, it's going to be real hard to concentrate and meditate for 5 hours a day if you're in a concentration camp, because you didn't pay attention to anyone else's needs, and now that's kind of problematic. And in line with that, I realized that if we want to see the kind of freedom we want in the world, it's going to take radical personal responsibility. And the kind of personal responsibility that we are most afraid to go into is what it's going to require. And it's not just action, but it's going to take the kind of personal responsibility that involves confronting our inner shadow. And what I mean by that is confronting your deepest fears. So all those fears you've been trying to run away from your whole life, the intention of life, of higher intelligence, is to get you to confront that. And I don't know about you guys, but confronting that and being on the journey to confronting that still is the most terrifying work that could ever be done. I'm sure there's a lot of you in the audience that are resonating with that as well. So the purpose of the mainstream media, and this even includes a lot of the alternative media as well, is they're trying to keep you from looking deep within. What they're trying to do is they're trying to keep you complaining, pointing the finger to someone else, not taking personal responsibility, basically trying to get you to do the opposite of everything that would bring a lot of prosperity and freedom to your life. So there's the emphasis on no personal responsibility, but there's also the emphasis on victim mentality as well. And a victim mentality is a huge problem because of the law of mentalism. It's a natural law. Everything that gets created and becomes manifested in the physical world first starts as a thought in your mind. So if you're not thinking about what you're wanting to create in the world and you don't have that intention, then it is not physically possible to actually bring what you want into the world. So this is something that the mainstream media downplays as well. But there's also a massive pandemic that the mainstream media is spreading called virtue signaling. Are any of you familiar with the definition of virtue signaling? How would you guys define virtue signaling? Anyone? Cowards? Well, not just virtue signalers, but how would you actually define the act of virtue signaling?
Look at me, I'm supposed to be doing the right thing.
Yeah, so posers.
You're part of the tribe.
Okay, just basically trying to fit in.
Performative judgment.
Performative judgment. Yeah, okay.
An attempt to improve your reputation through action.
Yeah.
Simple, meaningless action.
Yeah. So the way I would describe virtue signaling is giving off the appearance of pursuing some noble cause to gain some sort of support or some sort of validation from other people. But the pursuit of that noble cause is disingenuous. It's actually just to increase your own power and serve your egoic needs. So that's what virtue signaling is. It's a way to, it's sort of a way to disguise your pursuit of your selfish desires while giving the impression externally that you're actually pursuing some noble cause. So for some of you, that might not be clear, so I'm going to get into examples of what virtue signaling is. The biggest example that is the most obvious is the COVID-19 pandemic. So how it works is the mainstream media says, we got to lock everything down, everyone's got to wear masks because we're trying to save grandpa and grandma. But so that's the noble cause that they're claiming to want to pursue to protect people. But what they're really doing is just consolidating their power. So power is becoming more centralized. As these businesses start closing, then businesses like Amazon and Walmart have a lot less competition they have to deal with. So they're directly benefiting from all these draconian measures. So that's virtue signaling. They're saying that they're doing it for the good of people, but in reality, it's against everyone's best interest and they're gaining much more power at the same time. Another example is the Antifa Summer of Love. Don't you guys just love that name? I mean, it's just the perfect way to describe what happened over the summer of 2020. There's nothing that screams social justice more than a bunch of white thugs screaming Black Lives Matter as they burn down black-owned businesses. So that's a perfect example of virtue signaling right there. You're claiming that you're in favor of lifting the boot off of minorities and black people, but what you're really doing is getting paid $15 an hour by George Soros and burning down businesses, which those the destruction of those businesses also contributes to the more centralized power of corporations as well, and increased power of government. But virtue signaling isn't just about taking action in pursuit of your own selfish desires. It's also inaction. You could virtue signal and not be taking action at all as well. A perfect example of that are these Twitter social justice warriors. So we've all seen them. They're everywhere. Where they'll post about being in favor of some cause that seemingly everyone could get behind around. Everyone could get behind. But when you look at how that person's actually living their lives, they're living in direct opposition to that, in complete apathy, or they're just not taking any action to actually, better the cause or move forward the cause that they claim that they're representing and speaking out against. You see this a lot with fake charities where they claim to, a lot of cancer charities, unfortunately, where they claim to want to find a cure for some disease or some cancer, but the reality is they have no interest in finding a cure at all, because that would mean losing their jobs, and some of these are very cushy jobs making six figures. So there's a conflict of interest right there, but they'll keep telling you, we're searching for the cure, can't find the cure. Yeah, it's rather disgusting. And the next I have on the list here are just the authoritarian Democrats that are supporting the lockdowns. This is related to the same thing that the mainstream media is doing by promoting all this nonsense. But the reason why these leftist Democrats are doing this is because they perceive the lockdowns and mandates as keeping them safe, but they'll tell you it's for other people. So that's where the virtue signaling comes in. They'll say it's for grandma and grandpa and for your safety, but in reality, they haven't confronted their own fear and worked through that. So it's being advertised as an act of selflessness, but in reality, it's an act of complete selfishness. Another thing is Republicans. So I'm not leaving anyone out of this. I'm going to be offending everyone. And another thing is Republicans blindly praising the military for what they do as well. And the military, when you join the military, the problem with that is that you're stuck in an order follower dynamic. You're not exercising your conscience. You're not asking yourself, is this the right action to take? And then based off your evaluation, taking the action or not taking the action. You're just blindly following orders. A perfect example is the invasion into Iraq, after 9/11, where it was claimed that it was to bring democracy and freedom to the Iraqis, but in reality, it was all about the acquisition of more resources. So that's virtue signaling as well. So virtue signaling is everywhere. It's a pandemic. It's one of the actual real pandemics that's going on, not the nonsense that we're being told. Let's talk about libertarians as well and how they virtue signal. So libertarians do this as well when they say they want freedom for the world, but in reality, they act in such a way where it's clear that they're only interested in their own freedom. So it's okay if that guy over there, is oppressed. He's in that part of the city or that part of the world. That's not affecting me, so that's not a problem. But I'm for my freedom. So these people aren't really a part of the freedom movement. They're part of the My Freedom movement. And this also manifests in such a way where if you're really about the freedom for the world, you would actually go out of your way to educate people. You would do some of the things that Benny was talking about. Get on your social media and talk to people about things that are going on in the world. Talk about the occult, talk about natural law, whatever. And you don't have to know everything before you do it. Even if you're just a couple steps ahead of someone else, just share what you know and get them to your level, and then you could worry about continuing to educate yourself. So don't wait until you know it all. You'll never know it all. People use that as an excuse too because they're fearful. But it's really just an excuse. And if enough people don't speak out, then it's ultimately the destruction of everything. So it is very important to speak out. So where does this virtue signaling comes from? It comes from where a lot of the dysfunction in the world comes from. And it comes from fear. It's fear on every level. Fear on what could happen to you in the external world. You're afraid of what people think, people in your family, afraid of what the government would do, afraid of what your employer would do. But it's not just physical consequences, it's also internal fear as well. It's a fear of confronting the very deep beliefs and assumptions you have about yourself. It's about the fear of not being good enough, the fear of not feeling smart enough, not feeling capable in some way. Just as much as any other fear, those are examples of fear that must be confronted as well and overcome. Because without that, you'll never be able to take the right action in the world. And if you don't take the right action in the world, well, we all know what the default option is. So that's exactly what shadow work is. It's looking deep within yourself, confronting how you really feel on a deep level about yourself, and asking, what kind of person am I? What is it here that I need to address that's affecting all my relationships and all the results I'm getting in the physical world? It's about knowing how your mind works. Well, not just your mind, but how your spirit, body, and mind all work so that you're able to actually make changes in a positive way. That's shadow work. And shadow work is also taking that knowledge and then applying it in the physical world, which is what wisdom actually is. It's just applied knowledge. And it doesn't get that much more simple. I mean, the New Age, one of the pet peeves I have about the New Age movement is the obfuscation of definitions. They try to make everything seem very woo-woo and mystical, and it has a way of turning people away. And I personally grew up a Christian, and I strayed away from that over time and got more into the New Age movement. And so many of these terms were just so ill-defined and just not fleshed out for me that I almost just completely rejected spirituality altogether. So, and if I hadn't found the works of a couple of other teachers that actually drastically steered the direction of my life moving forward, then I might not actually be here. I might be stuck in the, some sort of scientism paradigm. So the big picture solution to our problems is the shadow work. It's not the political process. It's not pointing fingers and blaming other people. It's doing the hardest work that there is on earth. It's looking within, confronting your own inner demons. Because if you don't confront your own inner demons, then that is ultimately what ends up creating demons on the outside world, in the external world. See, so many of these people that seem to be totally insane actually comes from the inability or unwillingness for themselves to look within and confront their fear. And because they're not doing that, that creates a condition of self-loathing, of self-hatred. And because that condition is so painful, what they do is they project it out onto the world. Ultimately, these people that hate the world and just want to burn everything down, they hate other people because they hate themselves. And it's impossible for it to be any other way. You will see this in every single case 100% of the time.